You're watching Debrief. I'm Narit Ben, here now with the latest outburst of religion versus the military here in Israel. This evening, ultra-Orthodox protesters blocking two major roads in central Israel. It's all about a question that this country has been struggling with for decades, and it's gotten much bigger over just the last few years. Should the religious be given a pass from the army service everybody else is required to complete? Joining us is senior defense correspondent Shai Ben-Ari. Take us through why this has come up again.
Good evening, Narit. Look, this is an issue that goes back to the foundation of the State of Israel. And every once in a while, the situation flares up again. It certainly did last night. We're talking hundreds of ultra-Orthodox Jews taking to the streets in 5 different towns and cities, with some of the protests getting extremely violent. Overall, at least 67 arrests were made, and 3 policemen were lightly injured during the clashes. The protesters threw objects at police and attempted to physically block street traffic. The trigger for Tuesday's violence was the arrest of a 24-year-old ultra-Orthodox man who police discovered to be an army defector. Most ultra-Orthodox Jews are in fact exempted from military service, but are required under a compromise to officially request that exemption from the IDF. Smaller-scale protests had actually been ongoing for several days before Tuesday's riots. These were organized by the more extreme ultra-Orthodox factions who object to any sort of compromise.
The community of the God-fearing will stand like a bulwark and without compromise and absolutely refuse to cooperate with the regime plans to assimilate the Haredi public into Israeli society and its licentious and heretical way of life.
The violence we've seen in recent days is unlikely to be the last word on this issue, as the problem of ultra-Orthodox national service remains essentially unresolved.
To hear a little bit more on this debate here in the studio, Rabbi Dov Lipman is the former senior official at the Chief Rabbinate of Israel. Rabbi Dov Lipman is a former member of the Israeli parliament in the centrist Yesh Atid party. Thank you both very much for being here. So, Rabbi Lipman, when we see those protests, when we hear about those protests tonight, the ultra-Orthodox blocking 2 roads in central Israel over this issue of the religious serving in the military, do you agree with them?
No. I mean, I don't agree with the violation. And I see it's a very small part of the Haredi wing. And I think the hardcore of the Haredi wing is against violence. But ideological, we agree with them.
But so to the core of what they're protesting, that actually the ultra-Orthodox should not have to serve in the military like almost all other Israelis do at the age of 18 after high school. You agree with that?
Yeah. The biggest question, one of the biggest questions here in Israel, is the question, who is taking really the burden of the DNA of a Jewish state? Is the Haredi way of life, people studying, only studying, or the secular army? Those are 2 burdens, the main burdens here in the Jewish state, and the debate between them who is the real one that takes it. And we believe, the Haredi wing, that the real burden are we, because 2,000 years in the diaspora that kept us as a Jewish people was the Haredi.
I have a feeling Rabbi Dov Lipman has a slightly different perspective. Dov?
Yeah, I certainly disagree, but let's first clarify a few things. There are more ultra-Orthodox young men serving in the army than ever before. The goals that we set out in our legislation are being surpassed every single year. We just had last week a new paratrooper unit, exclusively ultra-Orthodox, with prayer services every day, Torah study every day, religious unit sworn in at the Western Wall. New kinds of programs increasing incredibly. That's number one. I do agree that this group that was out there demonstrating is not reflective of the broader ultra-Orthodox community, and it's an extreme, extreme group, and it's not the norm. Having said all of that, I also agree that spirituality is necessary and Torah study is necessary for our military to succeed. But I'm leaving this studio to go to a yeshiva where my son is studying, where they combine the 2 together. They're studying Torah on the highest of levels, and they serve in the military.
Rabbi,
so the question would be, why can't the ultra-Orthodox community find that combination together? That's point 1. And point 2, which I would ask Rabbi Halberstadt, is in the olden days, they always quote about the tribe of Levi, the Levites who used to just study Torah. When a military conflict came, they went to the battlefield and studied there. Would Rabbi Halberstadt call for the yeshiva boys to actually go to the battlefield and study their Torah there to reflect the nature of the spiritual defense they provide for Israel?
It's a plain answer because I think he knows, Rabbi Lipman, that all of the Jewish Haredi sages, scholars, they believe that nowadays, here and now, I'm not talking what will happen 50 years, I don't know, in the future, but here and now, you cannot be Haredi in the army. It's a very non-spiritual place because it's a very materialistic, non-spiritual, secular place.
Isn't it by definition? I just want to stop you on the non-spiritual for one moment because we are talking about a military system. It has its obvious restraints and its actions are very largely determined by the area, by conflict, by war, by its neighborhood, so to speak. Does it have to fit into that spiritual box?
Yeah, because you have to know that in this special age that you are young, the young studies, he coming to the army, it doesn't, it doesn't matter if there is a war, there is no war, what is the politics. Coming into the army means he will not stay the same religious personality as it has before. It cannot be. It's against the human nature.
Rabbi Dov Lipman?
First of all, the great sages that the rabbi referenced said that any boy who's not studying Torah day and night as their only pursuit, the Hebrew term is Torah to'um nato, that's all they want to do is study Torah, they should not stay in yeshiva and they should go into the army. So I met with one Rosh Yeshiva, a very prominent person, who said that 60% of the boys, after a few years, it's no longer Torah to'um nato. So will you stand here today and say, yes, all those boys who are not studying Torah day and night, their only pursuit, you won't find them in the shawarma places, you won't find them on the streets, only Torah day and night, that they should even go to the army?
No, because to keep...
The Torah sages say they should. The sages say they should.
You say that they said, but it's not true. If it was true, 60% of the Haredi people should have been in the army. The truth is that for keeping the Jewish Haredi identity as a community, even those who are not studying all the day long has to be out of the army. It will ruin them. It's,
very big. Unfortunately, we have to wrap this debate here, but these are really core questions about Israel's identity. A lot of Israel's secular majority feels the other way. We'll continue the conversation.
And even for religious people, they can be strong in the army as well.
Rabbi Dov Halbertal, Rabbi Dov Lipman, thank you both very much for weighing in. And we're going out for a short break. When we're back, a scandal-ridden prime minister, but a popular one. What is Benjamin Netanyahu's secret? When we're back.